I'm David Lombardo, and this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're turning our attention to legislation designed to strengthen protections for mobile home residents against undue rent increases. And our guest is Yvonne Maldonado, the former New York organizer for Manufactured Housing Action, a national coalition of manufactured home residents. Thanks for making the time, Yvonne.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So the legislation in New York, which has now moved through both houses of the legislature, requires manufactured home park owners to provide a written justification for rent increases that would be in excess of 3% of the current rent. And we can get into the mechanism there and what that would look like if it is signed into law. But what is the problem that this is looking to address? For example, have you found in New York that a lot of these property owners are charging residents rent increases well in excess of 3%?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rent justification actually has to do also with the HSTPA that passed in 2019, where it capped manufactured homes across New York State at 3%.
And for listeners who aren't familiar, that was some pretty sweeping legislation that
Right.
was designed to protect renters and also included those people living in mobile homes.
Exactly. And when I started organizing with MH Action, we discovered a loophole in it where a lot of park owners were still raising the rent over the 3% without a justification. And we reached out to legislators. We educated legislators about the loopholes. We approached Didi Barrett. Assembly Didi Barrett was a big part of the bill that passed in 2019,
Hmm.
for her to see if she would take on a legislation for, to fix the loophole fixes that we found. She took it on, and so did Senator Skoufis. So we approached Senator Skoufis on the Senate side, and we approached Assembly Didi Barrett on the Assembly side. It passed. We've been fighting it since 2020, 2021, and it either passed the Senate, didn't pass the Assembly, or it was always a little hiccup. And the bill really basically doesn't cost anything in the budget per se. I know a lot of legislation sometimes inquires, budget for it to be included with the budget. This legislation, what actually does is gives transparency to the residents when their lot rent is increased over 3%. And these park owners do not give a justification when they're supposed to give us a justification. This will give some victory, some transparency again. When, example, they give me and I'm going to use myself as an example,
Sure.
they give me an increase over 3%, that gives me the ability and the right to go to the community manager or write an email to the park owner and say to them, well, wait a minute, you gave me over 3%. I would like to know what justifies that. Where is the documentation that shows me why you're raising me over 3%?
Yeah, and I imagine there are valid reasons why a manufactured home park owner might look at all of their expenses, whether it's property taxes or if they are doing maintenance and upkeep, or if they're doing something else to improve the property, why their expenses might go up more than 3%. And in those cases, does it make sense to you at least to see potential increases for rent above 3% as long as it's spelled out for the tenants?
Well, if they could really give the legal documentation
Hmm.
that really shows and that it doesn't exceed that expense, then okay. I mean, it all depends on the situation because what I've encountered being an organizer and on ground is these parks, these manufactured home parks are being gobbled up by private equity investors, and they want the money but they don't want to do the repair,
Right.
so they increase the rents and the maintenance goes down, so no repairs are really being done. So why are you going to raise us over the 3% when you're not really doing any repairs?
Well, so I guess my question then is, in the future, What is the mechanism? If this bill becomes law and someone tries to raise rent above 3% and they submit some sort of justification that you or another resident think doesn't pass the smell test, what is the next step? Do you take it to the Attorney General's office?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We would take it to the Attorney General's office.
And they would then what? Potentially pursue civil action against them? What would you want the response to be?
What I would want, and just as many residents would want, they would want some
Mm,
accountability to be held against these park owners. It is so unfair to all of us, and I'll speak on myself as well, that it is unfair. You're going to raise our lot rent. Tell us why you're raising it. These parks, as my experience on ground, a lot of parks do not have a pool, doesn't have amenities, doesn't have a park for the kids to play in, doesn't have sidewalks. It doesn't have many, many things. The infrastructure for the water is horrible, whether it's septic, whether it's sewer, especially in the parks with septic. Parks with septics, it's in demolish. It's
mm,
horrible what families got to go through. And it's unfair. These are your parks. We live in them. We rent the land that our homes sit on. Fine. But if you're going to raise us, give us a good reason why you're going to raise us. Example, if they say they're going to put a park or a pool, so they're going to turn around and give us over a 3% because that's an amenity. Okay, well, give us the proof why, how much it's going to cost you. And let's see if that increase really equals to what it's going to cost you.
mm. Would you hope that a potential side effect of this legislation, if it becomes law, is that some of the hedge funds, for example, that have moved into this space because they see this as a profit-making opportunity, get out of the business, and that these become more community-owned and operated, or I guess more benevolent owners come in to this space who aren't necessarily looking to get blood from a stone, so to speak?
Absolutely. I wish these park owners would sell the communities to all of
Mm,
us, to families that live in manufactured homes, because it would be great. It'll be better off ran by the residents themselves, being owned by a public entity, a private entity, a cooperative, or whatever way best would work for the best of the residents that live in the communities. We do have right of first refusal that actually passed
right.
in 2024.
But is there a good way, say, for a co-op to come together and finance that type of purchase? Is that something that still needs to be addressed? That ability to access the capital to make a big purchase like that? Is that something the state could do more to help on?
Absolutely. And there is resources through the HCR
Hmm.
and other programs. There is money out there. There is potential chance for for residents in these communities for them to get together and come to the table, do their homework, do their research, and to be able to buy the community. There is a community in New York State that actually just stopped a big corporation from buying their community. And it was the first community to exercise their right of first refusal, the law that just passed
Right.
in, I forget what community it is, but it is in New York.
Yeah, I believe that was in the town of North Elba in Essex County.
Yes, yes, which is fantastic. They got a private developer that was willing to work with them, and they were able to stop this big corporation from buying their park. So we're very happy for that. We were very, very happy for that.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with Yvonne Maldonado. She's the former New York organizer for Manufactured Housing Action, a national coalition of manufactured home residents. Yvonne, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Great pleasure to speak to you.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by New York State United Teachers, a statewide union of nearly 700,000 professionals in education and healthcare.